Hello, this is Devorah again, right? If you're very sensitive, if you're a snowflake, and you can be a snowflake at any age, if you easily get upset, or if you go, I am so offended, that is terrible, I'm so offended, don't watch this video. Stop now, because I'm going to talk about a very controversial subject, which is suicide. Because last night I just watched a program about how do you recognise the signs of suicide among all your friends and acquaintances, and what you should do. Well, first of all, they started by suggesting, and I would say very controversially, that suicide is actually a mental illness. But the question is it a mental illness? When you consider what people have to go through in life, what they choose to endure and keep persevering with and putting up with, and they're having more and more put upon them, and they're enduring and keeping on going, one has to ask the question, are those who choose to just leave mentally ill, or is it those who choose to persist with these weights of all their troubles? Are they not a bit mad? Because why would you go on suffering indefinitely, day and night, with trouble after trouble after trouble for years on end, when you could simply escape? You see? So they're saying you must be mentally ill to want to escape severe pain and agony. People are living with terrible physical pain, terrible emotional pain, terrible spiritual pain. They're in agony. And you say they're mentally ill for wanting it to stop, for wanting it to stop permanently? No. There was also, they were telling slight porkies, because what they were saying is, tell anybody if you feel like committing suicide. And this is how it is on the media at the moment. Tell anybody if you're feeling suicidal. Just tell somebody. But I can tell you, as somebody who tells people I've got a headache, oh, my neck is so hurting so much, I can tell you for a fact people can't handle it. If people can't handle your backache, for heaven's sakes, oh, she's not going on about a backache, I can't cope with this. If people cannot cope with you going on and on about, oh, it hurts here, oh, it's still hurting here, oh, stop going on about it, I can't handle this. If people cannot handle things like this, how are they going to handle it when you say, actually, I feel like committing suicide? The fact is, people won't know what to say. Would you know what to say if somebody said, oh, by the way, I feel like committing suicide? Oh, right. Oh, why? But can you listen? No. People can't listen because you'll be interrupting all the time. Because this is what we have to do. We have to interrupt when somebody's talking. because our mind's buzzing with suggestions, all sorts of suggestions. We can't listen, we can't listen, we can't listen. And we immediately feel that we have to come up with a solution to a very complicated problem that's probably taken months and years to come to fruition. You know, if somebody decides to commit suicide, it's not just, on a whim. Oh, I just thought I've just decided I think I'll commit suicide. No, there's things that have been going on perhaps for months and years, maybe decades. And it's a very long, complicated subject. And of course, to be honest, you're out of your depth because ordinary people won't know what to say and they won't know what to do. What nobody has suggested in the media, nobody, here in the UK, nobody has suggested if you're feeling suicidal, go to the doctor, right? If you feel suicidal, you might commit suicide and you're worried about it, because other people might not be worried about it. You see, if you are concerned about it, then you would go to your doctor. If you have severe backache, everybody would say, well, go to the doctor. If you've got toothache, you go to the dentist. When a person is physically ill, you say, well, go to the doctor. Go to the doctor. If you've got diarrhea, you don't tell everybody, I've got diarrhea, and I've tried everything and it's not working. And you keep telling everybody, I've got diarrhea. No, what you do is go to the doctor. That's what you do when you're physically ill, right? So if you're feeling very, very depressed, if you're feeling very sad, if you're feeling like life's not worth living and you need to talk to something, the most obvious place would be a doctor, right? Because this is not about mental health. This is about mental illness. And this is what people in the UK are not wanting to be called mentally ill. Because everybody's concerned about the mental health. But you never hear anybody say, oh, do you know, I'm so worried about my physical health. Have you ever heard anybody in the United Kingdom say, I am worried about my physical health? No, never. You will never hear anybody in the UK say, I am worried about my physical health. But because it's to do with the mind and the emotions and feelings, everybody is worried about their mental health. When really what they're getting at is they're worried that they're mentally ill. But nobody's prepared to say it, right? If you are feeling very, very extremely anxious, extremely depressed, then you are concerned that you might be mentally ill. And if you think that, you would go to the doctor. Because if you're very, very depressed, you could be mentally ill. But you don't want to hear that, do you? Because there's still a stigma with the word mentally ill. Everybody likes the word mental health because it's fudging the real thing. I trained as a psychiatric nurse to do with the psyche, the mind, right? Now I don't know what they're called. Mental health nurse. This is ridiculous. It's a stupid title. Nurses are not called physical health nurses. You never hear anybody say, I'm a physical health nurse, right? When I trained, you were a psychiatric nurse to do with the mind. The nurse that dealt with the mind. You dealt with mental illness. You didn't deal with people who were mentally healthy. You dealt with people who were mentally ill, right? If you're severely depressed, anxious, you've got severe OCD, all sorts of compulsions and all sorts of horrible things, and you're hearing voices, then that is a sign that you might be mentally ill. And that's the very word that nobody wants to say, mentally ill. And I'm saying to myself, Devorah, you're going off the subject completely because we're moving away because this is supposed to be about suicide. Right? But it's some interconnection, isn't there? Because you can see where I'm going with this. Because I don't think a person necessarily is mentally ill for committing suicide if they've been suffering intensely, particularly with severe mental illness. Right. There are people that are tortured every day of their lives by voices that condemn them and mock them. I just cannot imagine. I think they're extraordinarily brave to continue living. I am just gobsmacked that they continue to live, because everything about what they're going through would suggest to me that what would keep them going? Where did they find the will to live? I find it extraordinary. And if they were to commit suicide, I would be the first to say, well, do you know, I understand it, because I don't think I could live like that. Equally, there are people that suffer the most awful physical pain. You know, they're trying everything. They're on alternative medicine. They tried all the tablets. They are suffering every day, day and night. They are having a horrible, horrible time of it. Right? And, you know, I think there are many, many people, and I know this is very controversial, and I'm not advocating suicide. What I'm saying is that sometimes we have to acknowledge that sometimes it's inevitable with suffering that people will end their lives. And it doesn't mean they're mentally ill. It means that they can't actually, they've had enough of pain. They've had enough of pain, right? When you've lived with pain for years, for decades, and you're trying to be brave, you're trying to look on the bright side, you're trying to count your blessings, then something else happens and you're in more physical pain, then something else happens and you've got more aggravation. You're trying to be brave, and then you say to yourself, I've had enough. I don't want to actually live like this anymore. So many people commit suicide for the simple reason they don't want to live with the suffering that they're having to endure. Now, this TV program was trying to suggest that this wanting to commit suicide is a mental illness that can be overcome, and you can overcome this and live happily ever after. Now, there will be some people that will feel suicidal. They one thing and another, things have happened and they're feeling at the end of the tether and everything's getting on top of them and they're feeling low and they want to talk to somebody, everything else, right? They feel, although they say they want to commit suicide, they actually haven't actually. You see, if you really want to commit suicide, you just get on and do it. Let's be quite clear. If you mean to commit suicide and you've made your mind up, you will do it. You won't consult anybody about it because that's stupid. You know, if I decide to become a vegetarian, I'm not going to consult a butcher about it, am I? I'll just have a word with the local butcher and see what he thinks about me becoming a vegetarian. That is ridiculous. If I decide to become a vegetarian and I've done my research and I'm quite happy with it, I'll become a vegetarian. I'm not going to consult a butcher. In the same way, if I'm going to commit suicide, I'm not going to ring Samaritans or any other organisation because I've made a decision and this is what I'm going to do. However, if I were feeling overwhelmed with problems and feeling that life is not worth living and I'm overwhelmed and I wish I could just talk to somebody and sort things out and get some help, inverted commas, whatever all of that means, then you might ring Samaritan, some counselling agency. But if you've actually reached the point in your life where you say, look, I've had enough of this suffering, I've endured it for so long, I actually don't want to live anymore because I don't want to live like this. Now, in this program, they're not being honest about the fact that there are situations that cannot be changed. People have to live with awful, awful situations, and there is no hope. Let's be quite clear about this. They're talking about hope, but you and I know there are plenty of people where there is no hope. They've been diagnosed with a horrible illness and they're suffering. There isn't a lot that can be done medication-wise. They are suffering, they're enduring, they're trying everything to help themselves, but it's terrible. It's agony, and it's gone on for years, and the people are worn down by it. Now, in that scenario, it is just lies to say to a person like that, things can get better, because the person knows it's not going to get better because they've already persevered for years. Can you see where I'm coming from with this? Now, I felt what I was listening to from all these people was just academic rhetoric from a book. This is all from a book. This is a book talk. This is manual talk. And I didn't feel that these people really get and understand really what's going on in the mind of somebody who's committing suicide, right, who wants to commit suicide. Some people feel desperate and they want to talk it through, and once they've found some sort of solution or somebody to help them with the problems, they might decide they do want to live. But there's another thing that they didn't mention, is the fact that the services are overwhelmed. If you were to go to your local doctor and say, I feel suicidal, the doctor would not be able to continue that consultation for an hour. No, not in the United Kingdom. They wouldn't be able to do it. They have a limited time, perhaps 5, perhaps at the most 10 minutes, right? What they would have to do is refer you to somebody like Samaritans or some other agency. They would then put you on a waiting list, perhaps to see a counsellor, right? But they wouldn't be able to actually spend time with you there and then to even begin to tackle what's going on, right? And the services in the United Kingdom are absolutely overwhelmed, the health services, right? And what's tending to happen is it's tending to go to amateur people. I can give you an instance of this. I remember decades ago ringing somebody. I'm trained in counselling, and I rang Samaritans here in the UK about somebody who I was concerned about, who I knew very well, and I wanted to talk to somebody like a fellow professional about this person, because I felt that they might commit suicide. So I suddenly had this idea, I'll ring Samaritans and talk it over with them. This was late at night, right? Very late. So I rang the Samaritans, and it was telling them about the person, and I just mentioned that they went to church. And the person said, which church? So I told them the name of the church, and they said, oh, I know that church. It's a wonderful church. It's a loving, caring church. That person will not commit suicide because that is a loving church. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, that is a load of waffle. That is a load of waffle. Because I know for a fact people from churches have spoken to me, from different churches, evangelical born-again Christians who are suicidal. I had one young man who told me he'd bought a gun. He had a gun, and it gave him consolation to have it at home, to know that if things came to a head, he could kill himself, right? And I suddenly realised this is just nonsense, right? And so, whilst these people are well-meaning, they also can be quite dangerous, because I suddenly realised what this woman was saying was absolute rubbish, right? The fact the woman went to a lively evangelical church, lovey-dovey church, doesn't mean that she would not commit suicide. It is a fact that even religious people with a strong faith, commit suicide. And it leaves people uncomfortable. It leaves religious people uncomfortable. You see, these people have a strong faith in God, but they are also suffering, and they reach a point where they feel that they can't go on. And they've probably said to God many times, as a person of faith, I can't cope anymore, God. It's too much. Take it away, take it away. I can't cope, it's too much. And of course, it doesn't always get taken away. This is the problem, right? Or it was, I don't know. We don't know what's going on inside of people's minds. But I think it was too shallow, the programme, and they're not being honest with people. And the fact is, sometimes it might be mental illness that causes people to commit suicide. If you're perhaps hearing voices that tell you to kill yourself, then one might say, well, it was the voices that told you to do it, therefore it's mental illness. Now that's very black and white. We all get that. It's very obvious, isn't it? If you keep hearing a voice, kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself, don't be surprised if that person kills yourself. But if this person is living in very difficult circumstances, with a terrible chronic illness, severe pain, they have this problem, then they have something else, and then they've got something else. You know, does it really mean that they're mentally ill when they say, I've had enough and I want to end my life? Now, I'm not advocating suicide. What I'm saying is that wanting to end it all for many people is actually logical when you actually think about what they're going through, you see. And you don't want to think about what they're going through. You see, there's only so much other people can do for somebody who is suffering, whether it's mental or physical or both. You can ring up every day, you can chat every day, you can pop in once, you can do all of that, but you can't live inside that person's physical body and their mind. And you don't have to endure what they're enduring mentally and physically, right? And because you cannot be in their heads and in their bodies and relieve their suffering 24 hours a day, nobody can do it, you see. It's impossible. And that's what people who commit suicide know that. They know that you care about them. They know you're doing the best. You know, the lady said yesterday that most men say that they believe that most people are better off without them. Right, that's what they believe. And the fact is, why do they believe that? And I would argue that probably some of their partners, some of their wives, would not want to live with them if they knew the way their partners really were. Their partners and husbands know that those around them don't want them to be the way they really are. In other words, that's why he's saying it. Nobody wants me the way I really am. Right? I am no good to anybody as I really am. Right? Because nobody wants me for as I really am. They only want me when I'm strong, I can cope with all their problems, I'm there for them, I'm the one in charge, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. They want me there because I can do all that. But now that I can't, will they still want me? And the answer is, for many women, the answer would be no. Because you have to look at the quality of the relationships that they have. They might be married or living with somebody who only wants them because they're strong and capable. That is the terms of the relationship. Right? You're the strong one, I'm the weak one. Right? Now, when the strong one becomes weak, the weak one won't like it. But I'm depending on you. I'm depending on you to be strong. Right? Now, the strong one knows it. The strong person knows that if they become weak, the weak person won't be able to handle it. Those around the person won't be able to handle it. They will be disappointed. They will be disappointed. And it is a fact that women are full of contradictions. Oh, really? Yes, they are. On the one hand, they want a sensitive man. But on the other hand, they want a man who is strong. Right? They want strong, very strong, very, very, very strong, because they will have an utter contempt for a man that's weak. Women do have contempt for men that are weak. That's a fact. They like strong men. But at the same time, they want him to be sensitive when it suits them. Only when it suits them. Otherwise, they want him to be strong all the time. And women do take great pride in being strong. I'm strong, I'm strong, I'm strong, I'm strong. This has happened to me to make me stronger. This has happened to make me stronger. Every woman says this. All women think that their adversity is sent to make them stronger. All women think all problems in life are sent to make them stronger. They think everything in life is being sent to make them stronger. And many women have a contempt for weakness. They do have a contempt for weakness because women want to be seen as strong. So if they have a man whom they perceive as strong suddenly become weak, they're not going to be very happy. And this is a fact. This is a fact. Women say they want a man who's sensitive, but they don't really. They want him to be strong. And he knows he's the strong one. He's been the strong one. And he knows the terms of relationship. She expects me to be strong. She expects me to be out there earning a living so that she can live in the life she's accustomed to. Right? And the fact that so many men feel this, that they'd be better off without me. What is that saying about the people around that man? That he should think that. And I want to suggest the problem is not with the man. The problem is with the people around that man. That he should have to think that. That because he's feeling low and depressed and can't cope and what have you, that he is not worth being around because he feels like that. So there's something in the people around him that are giving him messages that as long as you're strong, we can depend on you, all of us. We want to depend on all of you. We all want to depend on you, right? You see. And when that person isn't dependable, what happens? Everybody else falls to pieces. And there can be resentment and can be anger from the spouses. And this works for men and women, right? Because when people enter into a relationship, it's kind of understood what the relationship is about. You're the one, you're the strong one, I'm the weak one. I depend on you. You don't depend on me, right? I'm not going to carry you. You have to carry me. It's like it's understood, right? And it is a fact that people generally wouldn't know what to say if you said you felt like committing suicide. I would say if you have a problem and if you want to live, right, but you don't feel like living because of different problems and all different things, then you need to find somebody appropriate to talk about your problems. right? It's got to be an appropriate person. You can't just go round telling your mates, because they're going to go, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. They won't know what to do. Well, the most obvious place, the starting point, is if you are feeling suicidal, but you don't actually want to commit suicide, but you're just feeling overwhelmed with your problems. A starting point is always, one of the best starting points is a doctor, right? Because you are on the path of becoming deceased, right? You are on the path of perhaps dying, right? Now, if you're on the path of dying, but you want to live, then the most obvious person to see would be a doctor, because that's what their job is, to help keep you alive. So if you're feeling suicidal because everything's overwhelming you, the best place to start is with a doctor, because their job is to try and help you keep alive and to perhaps refer you to people who could help you concerning your specific problems, who might be able to advise and counsel you. Doesn't that seem more logical than just telling Rita, Dave at the sports club, Melanie over there? You know, the worst people to tell, the last people to tell are your family and your friends, because there's nothing they can do. They're ill-equipped and they won't know what to do. All they'll do is worry and fret, and they'll come up with loads of suggestions, and which will be totally useless, and they'll be in a state, and you already know this, which is why you don't tell people. People are going to commit suicide. Don't tell the family and friends for this very reason. People who are determined, have made the decision to commit suicide, are not going to tell anybody, because you've made your decision. This is what I want to do. And if you're firmly decided this is what you want to do, then people go and do it. This is why people always, you hear this all the time, there was no warning. Well, of course there's not going to be any warning. The person has made a decision. They don't want to tell you, because you will argue with them and say, don't commit suicide. But you've already decided you want to commit suicide. Why would you tell somebody something that they're going to argue with you? I mean, if I decide I'm going to London tomorrow, I'm not going to tell my friend, because she'll say, you shouldn't go to London tomorrow. I don't want you to go to London tomorrow. So I'm not going to tell her that I'm going to London tomorrow. You don't tell people something if they're going to disagree with you and argue with you and try and prevent you from doing it, right? And that's why people who commit suicide don't tell you, because they've made their mind up. They don't want you to argue with them, because they are firmly decided, and they actually don't feel they've decided this is their decision. You might not agree with it. You might be angry about it. You might be upset about it. But the way they're feeling is, this is my decision. I've thought it through, and I'm not going to tell you, because this is private and this is something personal to me. Even if you're married, even if you're the best of friends, we all have our private space, our soul. And we all have that private space. And it is private. And you have to respect people's privacy. Because many people do make that decision, the private, personal decision, for whatever reason, that they don't want to live anymore. They've thought it through, and they don't want to live with the suffering that they're going through. You cannot relieve that suffering. They know you cannot relieve that suffering, right? They know you cannot relieve that suffering. They know nobody else can relieve that suffering, right? Sometimes suffering can be relieved, but sometimes it can't, right? And we have to accept sometimes that those who do commit suicide, I mean, I knew a lady, and she said to me, she was about 50 then, she said, This had been going on for years. I got the picture, and she said to me, I have decided if life does not get much better in the next year, I will commit suicide. So this is a long-term thing. This is something she's been thinking about for a long time. And she has decided that if things don't get better, in a year's time, she will end her life. She's decided this, she's thought it through, and this is what she's proposing to do. Right? Now, at the time, I was trying to, this was many, many, many years ago, dissuade her. But now, I probably wouldn't, if I'm honest. If she was sitting here now, I wouldn't say anything. Because this is a smart, very smart, intelligent 50-year-old woman, very smart, who's gone through a lot of suffering. And she has reached the end of a tether. And she is coming to the conclusion now that really she cannot go on much longer. And if things don't improve, this is what she's going to do. And I wouldn't actually say anything now. I would just sit and listen. And I wouldn't argue back. I wouldn't try and even counsel her. I would just hear her, you see. And sometimes just being heard is itself helpful because it's about clarity. Because sometimes people have to be clear in their own minds. A woman like that will think it through very, very carefully. She might well have done it by now. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised, but I also wouldn't be surprised if I found out that she was still alive. It could go either way, you see. But it's her decision. And sometimes you just have to accept the decision that the person has made. And it's that private space that you don't live in. Nobody lives in that private space. And you have to accept that they do have a very, very good reason for what they've done. And they are doing it to relieve their suffering. And that's what you have to understand. And there's nothing that you could have done about it. They know there's nothing that you could have done about it. There is nothing that you could have done about it. You can love somebody, but you can't take away all that pain. You can't be inside the mind or the body with the suffering that person is going through. If a person is going through intense physical suffering and they're enduring it, and perhaps mental torment, and they've gone through it for years, decades, and they're worn out from it. All the cups of tea and cuddles are not enough because the pain is too great and people are worn out. Suffering is exhausting. Torment, physical, mental torment is suffering. You get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And the person will look the same to you. Because what's happening is you're getting two people. Right? How many times has somebody said to you, how are you? And you say, oh, fine. You're not fine. You're worried about something. You're upset about something. Had an argument at work. You know, there's something on your mind. But what do you say automatically? Oh, fine. Yeah, fine. We all put on an act to everybody. We all do it automatically. How are you? Oh, fine. How are you? Fine. Yeah. Anything the matter? No. Oh, you look a bit down. No, fine. No, you are down. You know you're down. But you don't tell that person for any number of reasons. That's another thing. The people that want to help are not necessarily the best people. They're not the sort of people that perhaps that you'd want to talk to. It's like people are judgmental. That's another thing. It's very rare to find a non-judgmental person because most people are very opinionated. We all have opinions. We all have points of view. And, you know, the best person really to counsel, to talk through with anybody who's feeling suicidal and bogged down with different problems and things has to be somebody who really is properly trained. And there aren't enough trained people. You need people who are trained in psychology, and you need medical professionals, right? If you have the money, it's worth perhaps seeing a professional psychologist. But I don't necessarily believe that it's helpful to just talk with your friends because they can't carry it. They can't carry it. People can't cope with just ordinary everyday things, never mind somebody who might actually end their lives. And you cannot problem solve all of that. It's too big and it's too great. And that's why the person isn't telling you, because they know they probably, if anybody speaks with them, it's got to be somebody who can fully understand. It has to be a professional, and you're not a professional. And there aren't enough professionals. There are waiting lists everywhere for desperate people who are severely mentally ill, people who are severely mentally ill with depression, with severe anxiety, people who are mentally ill. They don't have mental health problems. These are people who are mentally ill. And if you're mentally ill, you need to be seeing a doctor. If you think you're mentally ill, you need to be seeing a doctor. If you are severely, severely depressed, then you are probably mentally ill. No, haven't got a mental health problem. No, you're probably mentally ill. And what I'm trying to do is show you the seriousness of it, right? Because it is serious. Being severely depressed is a mental illness. It's like having a severe physical illness. There's a difference between having, a bit of a cold and having a severe migraine attack. A severe migraine attack might mean you could need to go to the doctor and get it sorted. Having the sniffles at home is just under the weather. Can you see the difference? If you are severely depressed, then you need to be seeing a doctor. If you're hearing voices, you need to be seeing a doctor. If you're so anxious it's totally incapacitating you and you can't leave your home, you need to see a doctor. You don't need to talk to your friends about it. You need to see a doctor. And I hope this video has been helpful in some way, shape, way, or form.